freedom is a new currency now. Freedom is really wealth, because why do we create wealth? Why do we work harder? Why do we take risks and start our own businesses? And why do we do all of that stuff? You have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not because people want to take on more of a roller coaster style of life. It's not because people want to challenge themselves necessarily and have tough conversations with employees and sleepless nights about tax bills and things like that. The whole reason that we go out and we do things like working hard and take on risks with business and the rest of it is to create a better life.
Welcome to the Freedom Podcast. My name is Constantine. In today's episode, we have a very special guest from Sydney, Julian Fadini. On this Freedom Podcast, we talk about financial freedom, spiritual freedom, achieving your wildest dreams. I personally went from picking bananas to running my advertising agency. Julian Fadini runs a buyer's agency firm specializing in helping rugby league athletes, celebrities, high-income earners invest in property. And he's been running his business for over 10 years. He's had, at the peak of his property portfolio, over 12 properties. And in today's episode, I can't wait to ask him a ton of questions, dissect all the knowledge, all the freedom, wisdom that we can find today. And just want to really thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your journey. Thank you so much, Julian.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
How was your trip so far in Melbourne? You arrived here a few days ago. What have you been up to?
Yeah, so I arrived here yesterday, so Thursday. The reason I was here was that I had a meeting with the Melbourne Storm. We, as you mentioned in the introduction, we've got a buyer's agency. We've been around for a few years. We do have exposure to dealing with a lot of professional athletes, in particular rugby league. We have a great amount of young rugby league players in our business. And I was actually meeting the Melbourne Storm and the welfare division of the Melbourne Storm because they were happy with the work that we've done with two of their young players to help them start to build their property journey. And then obviously tonight is the big game against the Roosters, and we also have some clients in the Roosters.
So could you clarify Roosters? I'm from Europe myself. I do live in Australia, but I didn't grow up here, learning about Australian Football League or Rugby League. There's going to be a lot of international viewers from business owners across the whole world. You're helping the Roosters is a rugby league in Melbourne, correct?
No, Melbourne Storm is rugby league in Melbourne. Storm. The Roosters are from Sydney.
Roosters from Sydney.
They're coming here to play tonight in Melbourne, and the winner of this game will go through to play the winner of another game, and that will be the grand final.
Amazing.
So whoever wins tonight goes into the grand final.
And you helped the players of both teams acquire property, correct?
That's correct. So I'm agnostic. So yeah, I'm wishing them both the very best and hoping the very best outcome for both of them.
Yeah, amazing. And who of the players gets the best property?
Well, I'd like to think that they all get great properties.
Yeah.
It's like children. You can't have a favorite. So, yeah. But when it does come to property, on a serious note, we have a very detailed and a philosophy and investment
which we're going to touch on about as well.
But yeah, we hope that we only pick winners for our players.
Absolutely. And it's also we'll talk about the personal approach Julian has in his buyer's agency firm, because it's all about what type of property you're looking into, what is your personal situation. There's so many factors involved into the way you help your clients invest in. But one thing that I always really love asking our clients, because I'm fascinated throughout my life, I've had the privilege to meet amazing people, including yourself, that have such a unique journey. It's not kind of a 9-to-5 person that just grinds out their life sitting in a train all day. You had a very unique life journey. Could you share me a little bit about your background and the journey that led you into doing what it is that you do right now?
Sure, perfect. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for having me on the podcast. What I really enjoy about spending time with you and working with you in our professional relationship, cause is the way that you think. I really appreciate the difference and the different angles that you bring to the work that we do. So my background, my parents were both born overseas. My father in Italy, my mother in the Ukraine. I grew up in Canberra, the capital of Australia. although some people will have different views upon it. It's the capital, nonetheless, a cold place. And it was at that period of time that I was going to a school called St. Edmund's College, and we had a lot of exposure to rugby union. And from rugby, we had some great talent go through the school, as did some other Christian Brothers schools around the country. And then, in Australia, our number one sport, or one of our top sports, is NRL. Now, for Europeans and things like that, it's definitely
football.
It's not the same, right? So I hear where you're coming from in that regard, and I spent time growing up and working in my career in banks and things like that, particularly the investment divisions or the wealth divisions of the banks.
Which banks were you working in?
I spent time at quite a few banks, Westpac, CBA, St. George. So all the major sort of banks, ANZ. And in those roles, I was providing support to more senior financial planners and advisors. Yeah. So that's where the passion, I guess, about making money for clients and the rest of it started. However, it's actually a terrible place to learn how to do the right thing by clients, because as we know now, the Banking Royal Commission has come about, and a lot of people were not treated very well by their banks and still aren't. And I'm not trying to bank bash, but definitely the mortgage broking industry is where a lot of people feel more comfortable getting some of their advice around lending.
Yeah, because the mortgage broker is sort of like, you have got your own business, and that's where you help your client actually find the best possible product the bank can have to help you facilitate the transaction.
Correct.
And there's, I've been kind of on a journey myself, finding kind of the right person for that and the right product too. And the interesting thing about it is, like, the banks have all their own kind of like their policies and different things, and in particularly with a mortgage broker, that's where it becomes really important, right? Like that knows, that has the relationship within banks, that has the opportunity to get like a lower interest rate for your clients. Could you share a little bit like what the difference is?
So I actually am not. I don't have a mortgage broking business. I'm not a mortgage broker, but basically the key advantage is that the mortgage brokers are able to work with multiple banks and lenders. So the alternative is, if you go to a bank, for example, and talk to them about a loan, they can only talk to you about the loan products that are within their organisation. A mortgage broker has access to all of the banks, or the majority of the banks, and all the different loan products. So they can literally compare, the whole market. Whereas if you go to a bank, you're not really comparing anything. You're just taking what the bank has to offer you.
And throughout the journey while working at the banks, you obviously had a pretty high salary. One of the things that I'm now experiencing as well is the amount of tax you have to pay at the end of the financial year. Wealth has, unfortunately, also its downsides, and earning high income. Is that where a little bit that passion for property, for securing kind of like wealth, is that where you experience that?
Yeah. Look, tax always does have that sting in the tail. It's definitely, when you're self-employed. When you're employed, you get your income post-tax. When you're self-employed, you accumulate all of the money throughout the year, and then you get hit with the bill, generally speaking, at the end of the year. The thing is, you really have to keep moving with whatever it is that you're doing. So, if you're buying properties, if you're investing, if you're running a business, and the rest of it, the costs to run those things are there. They're fixed costs, taxes, and other bits and pieces. So it does feel like it's a continuous running race. What I found in my journey to property was that in my time working for the banks, they had a lot of investment products and things like that, superannuation, managed funds, that they promoted as a way for the clients to make money and create wealth. But over the time that I spent time working in those divisions, one asset class stood out head and shoulders above all the others, and that was residential property in Australia. So residential property in Australia, it's had a great run. In my personal opinion, we are going to continue to have a great run because we simply are not creating enough housing for the amount of people that we have in the country. And there is a very well documented undersupply in housing. And to make things even more attractive for property investors, we're growing the country at a rapid rate by inviting migrants over here to Australia.
Yeah, plus I feel like after, traveling to over like 30 countries, I've lived in like five, six countries, like for a longer period of time. I truly believe that this is the best country like on planet Earth. That's just my personal opinion. And also if you look just at the graph, if you're watching this from the States or somewhere else, in Australia we have literally like a graph where if you compare it from the 80s till now, it's literally like the property pricing is only like gone up, and we haven't had a recession for over like what I don't know, like last few years. It's like on the edge, but we didn't really have like a crazy recession where things like crashed or anything like that. So it's been very stable asset as well.
Been a very long time. A lot of talk about that at the moment, like the performance of the economy and where it's actually at, but it's been a long period of time. Yeah, it's quite a distinction when you are somebody that's travelled overseas and the rest of it, and for our overseas viewers and people that see Australia as this huge country all the way over here by ourselves and the rest of it, it's hard to try to get into your mind that we have a shortage of housing and land, because when you look at the country, 90% of the people live on the East Coast, 10% live on the West Coast, and then in between we could fit the whole of Europe a few times in between those two locations. So,
every person, there's definitely, on planet Earth, there is no shortage of space to live. It's just that we're all congregated as people in the cities. I definitely think moving forward with the internet and AI, people are going to keep, especially the ones that work online and remotely, which is something I highly encourage and promote. We have a free course on our channel to help people understand how to advertise, which is a career that made me that created that freedom that I desired for a long period of time.
Yeah. And interesting. The thing that I love about this podcast, and particularly you, Cos, is the touch on freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom is a new currency now. Freedom is really wealth, because why do we create wealth? Why do we work harder? Why do we take risks and start our own businesses? And why do we do all of that stuff? You have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not because people want to take on more of a roller coaster style of life. It's not because people want to challenge themselves necessarily and have tough conversations with employees and sleepless nights about tax bills and things like that. The whole reason that we go out and we do things like working hard and taking on risks with business and the rest of it is to create a better life.
Live life on your terms as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the society tries to box you in a certain way, and I've studied for 24 years, all the way from when I was 3 years old already. You got tasks at school learned, you have to learn it in this way, in that way. I've gone through this whole journey, became an engineer, aviation engineer. To what? To arrive in Australia, I was picking bananas and avocados, mate.
Yeah.
That was one of my first jobs. So I was trying to look for work in the aviation space, all this kind of stuff. There was no demand for it.
Yeah.
Right. So the whole thing is it's just an illusion. You get prepared to become an employee in this world, and then it's really the only options you have is continue your employment and invest with people like yourself that have knowledge, in-depth expertise about how to invest in property, or you start your business and try to make out of it, or you combination of both, which we're going to talk about. But in specifically, Julian, what I realized is you have a very unique approach to helping your clients invest in property. Could you share me a little bit about your philosophy and how you do things?
Yeah, perfect. So the thing is about investing in property is that a lot of people have an opinion, about investing in property.
Yeah.
It's definitely an asset class. If we're talking about buying and holding property, it is definitely about taking a longer term view. I think, a lot of people can get away with providing mediocre results from their recommendations by saying that property is a long-term play. So we definitely advocate that property is a long-term play, but we want to see our clients get their 20% back within 12 to 24 months. So why 20%? Well, not that many people use 20% anymore, but 20% is roughly the deposit that you require to get into property. Now, as investors, we can use 10% loans. Athletes are very fortunate that the banks will give them a 10% loan with no mortgage insurance. Investors, on the other hand, that don't have any special qualifications will have to pay mortgage insurance, but 20% is the number that we use in our modelling to say, right, well, we want 20% back in 12 to 24 months. Why? Because that 20% we want to use it again to buy another property. So
and so on and so on. And it's very important to get that first one right.
Correct.
Otherwise, you just push the deposit into property and it's kind of locked in there. And if the asset doesn't grow or something goes sideways,
perfect.
It's very hard to get the second and third one, right?
So if we look at the last 5 or 6 years in the Australian property market, for example, it's a really great period of time to highlight why we do what we do, because a lot of people jumped into the market with these really cheap interest rates, and fast forward a few years and 12 interest rate increases, one after the other. Those properties went from being cash flow positive to heavily negatively geared. Now, if you haven't done your research to get your capital growth and you're forking out a lot of money after your take-home income to hold on to something that's not going up in value, well, you haven't bought yourself an asset, you've bought yourself another liability.
You bought negative cash flow. That's basically
exactly right. So we're in the business of creating wealth through strategic purchases of assets. And by the very definition of an asset, it means it needs to be making you money.
Yeah.
Because if you're paying for something and it's not making you money, well, then it's not an asset.
Yeah. And so just to kind of explain things as well, there's in Australia, there's a lot of people invest in negatively geared assets, which basically means you buy an asset that not fully covers the loan with the rent that you get from the tenant. So that could be $500,000 in the negative that you invest every single month, but then the property value goes up. And if you do it correctly, it kind of like a risk. It's a risk kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like you can buy like a big, very high quality property. It might be a little bit negative cash flow first few years. Interest rates drop down, and then it can either be equally neutral geared, or then jump into the positive.
Sure.
But what I found is with Julian, and there's on top of negative and positive gearing, there are different types of property. There's duplexes, there's normal house and land packages, there's apartments. Can you share a little bit your unique approach with that?
Yeah. So coming from a professional advice background within the banks and the rest of it, what we do is we really want to understand what the client's goals are. So for athletes, for example, who are on a very high income, so athletes, doctors, anybody who are earning a high income, if they're in the beginning of their career and they've got the career planned out, what they would find, going to give those people who are already paying the highest amount of tax, a tax rate on the income that giving them more income is not really solving the problem. So unless you give them income with growth, well, you're not really helping them, because every dollar that you make, they're paying away 40 cents of it on top of the 40 cents that they're already paying away in their other income. So what's really important there is that we tailor the strategy. But we have clients that are looking for growth, and that's cool. So what we would suggest for people that are looking for growth is we look for places that have a limited amount of opportunities to create housing. So that's really what housing market in Australia is at the moment. It's all about supply and demand. And wherever there's more demand for housing than supply, we're seeing, like you mentioned before, a continuous year-on-year growth. And now we're also seeing year-on-year growth in rents. But if the equation is the other way around, where there's too much supply, for example, Melbourne, you have to be really careful about some of the locations that you invest in. And right now, as of today's date, at this podcast, Melbourne is having a bit of a lag in comparison to a lot of the other cities, both on rental income and growth. And there's other things that play in the background with political decisions and taxes and stuff like that. So supply and demand. Now, right now, Australia really in 90% of in a lot of the locations where we're particularly focused in, you can get both. You can get growth and you can get great income. So yeah, we have an Airbnb strategy for some of our clients, which gives them great growth and great income. We have, really affordable options in emerging markets that have a very limited amount of land supply and things like that. And then the majority of what we do is generally East Coast and close to water based. And that's what served our investors really, really well over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. And duplexes as well that provide like dual income. Basically, you buy like one piece of kind of a unit, but that's divided into two.
So duplexes duplexes can be a fantastic investment, particularly because what you're doing is you're extracting as much value as you can out of one block of land. So there are some people out there that talk about dual occupancies. Duplexes and dual occupancies are very different. A duplex gives you two titles. A dual occupancy will give you two incomes on one title.
Amazing. And kind of could you break down maybe like a negative belief that I have, and a lot of like the viewers are going to be also like fellow advertising agency, digital marketing experts in different kind of like industries and niches. What I love about the digital marketing business and specifically an advertising agency is we get positive cash flow, right? So when you sign a retainer, it's like, bam, it's a 2, 5, 10K retainer, positive cash flow.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in our space doing coaching, providing similar service to us. But we're kind of stuck in that mindset of like accumulating cash, very high percentage kind of like profit margins, a lot of cash up front. We'll of course invest in our own businesses and all this kind of stuff. But one thing that with property is when you invest, you put down a deposit 10-20%. On top of that, you also pay tax, which is stamp duty, which doesn't make sense in my mind, because the salary that the income that we've worked for, we're already being taxed. So let's say I've got 100K. You've got sitting in the bank, you already pay tax over it, like whatever that is, 30-40%. You've got that 100K, you push it into property, you buy $1 million asset, ta-da, you have to pay stamp duty.
So cool. So here's the distinction.
Yes.
So let me help you out here, right? So what we have in the world and in Australia, and let's just focus on Australia, is that you go to work, you make money, you're great at what you do, you put that money where? Well, you put it in the bank. Okay? So whilst that money sits in the bank, you're getting interest on the money in most cases, right? So it provides you more income, even though it's a low interest rate. Okay, so the money has to go somewhere. So you go to work, you work really hard, and let's just use 100 grand for example. You put your 100 grand in the bank, you get 4% return on interest. Well, that interest 4% is now taxed at your tax rate as well. So if you're a high income earner, you're now paying on that 4%, you're paying the highest tax rate on the income from the 4%. So now everything else that you do is going up. Your groceries are going up, your petrol's going up, your electricity is going up, everything's going up. That's the inflationary thing. So the 100 grand in the bank, not only are you not really earning interest, because by the time you net out the tax that you paid on the interest and the rest of it, but that $100,000 in year 2024 is going to buy you less than it's going to buy you in year 2028 and year 2029, 2030. Like so you have to turn your cash into something that outpaces inflation. And so what real estate does is it provides you that opportunity, because you can take a little bit of your cash and then you can borrow some money from the bank and you can buy an asset. Now, you pay some tax, but you can also collect some tax benefits along the way with your interest costs and other bits and pieces. But a house today is definitely, in most cases, is going to be cheaper than it's going to be in 10 years. And so you have to
do something.
You have to do something, and you have to be very aware about having inflation on your side and using it to get the most for you versus it having you eat away your dollars. So when you're picking bananas, for example. Another one I use is not really use it that much, but just for example, when I was going to school, you could get a Big Mac meal for $5, right? Large Big Mac meal was $5. I don't even know what a large Big Mac meal is now, but I'm going to say it's about $15.
Three times.
Yeah. So if you don't get your money out of the bank, then and get it into something, and you can invest in other things besides property. You can invest in shares and crypto and businesses and things like that. They're all great investments if you know what you're doing. It just so happens that Property 360, we focus on property.
Yeah, and one thing that I learned from Robert Kiyosaki was, debt is a good thing, and he invests in a lot of property himself. And in specifically that inflation part, that did stuck with me, because let's say you put that 100K into $1 million asset, the inflation sort of it eats, now you've got an asset of $1 million, so you borrowed someone else's money to acquire an asset that is worth $1 million, and the inflation ticks over the $1 million.
Correct.
So, and that's the whole banking system in itself, especially in America, that is in so much debt. And one of their mindsets is as well, they keep spending, right? But over time, inflation erodes that volume of cash.
Correct.
And that's how they can keep, that's one of the ways they keep spending, which is absolutely crazy. And one thing that kind of I want to create an open discussion: what does give more freedom? Business, property, and let's add a third one: stocks and crypto.
Sure. So we don't provide advice on stocks and crypto. And to be perfectly honest, I'm terrible at. I missed all the cryptos. I did not really jump on board with any crypto. Stocks, shares to me have a very important part in people's portfolios, but for me personally, it's not where I store a great deal of my money. Freedom, just to answer the question about freedom. So freedom comes, I think, in stages, and if we just talk about the process. So the first thing you do for freedom is you break out of your 9 to 5.
That's step number one.
Step one, right? Now, there are some people out there that will tell you they can buy property with no money down, and they can create income streams and stuff from money and the rest of it, and that's fine. That's not what we do. But step one, I think, is if we're talking about a freedom protocol, I think step one is finding something that you're good at, learning how to monetize that as much as you can, leverage off your skill set and the things that you can bring to the table in business, and that creates your first set of freedom. And then away you go. You become good at that, and you create more money than you can spend. So you've got savings, and once you get to that level, the next level is, I need to protect my savings. I need to make sure that my savings are going to grow. So the next level is, what do I invest in? So then you can go and invest in a whole range of things. People invest in cars and things like that. There's
the car is the worst one, because it just, the moment you buy it, it's worth 30%.
Yeah, but some people know their way around things. Watches, for example. I know a lot of guys that buy Rolexes and things like that. Yeah, it just so happens that we use
amazing one, a stunning piece, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to say, I'm not going to say it's one of the best performers, but one of my favorite things to collect at the moment, and I've only just started, is Rolex watches. So a good friend of mine got me into it, and the watch game it's very addictive.
You have connections with the ADs or something, like a good source where they can provide for a good price? Because not all pieces are they're kind of below.
So it's like opening a new door into a new realm. It's interesting because Rolex as a business, there's Rolex stores.
Yeah, but no one sells.
You can go in and see the watch you want to buy, but most likely when you go to ask them for it, they'll laugh at you and say, look, if you haven't got a profile with us and the rest of it. So interesting marketing play with the Rolex.
It's crazy how it's still one of the stores where you just walk in, there's nothing to buy, but yet the relationships, it's based off relationships. That's what I realized throughout the COVID and all these crazy things that have been happening. Relationships are so important, and even in the age where we have AI and even there's like AI dialers where it's just like the human element completely is gone. And I'm currently thinking of like, okay, like if I'm head to head with AI, how am I going to compete with these people?
Yeah.
Everything is going to be boutique style. Everything is going to be 100% on relationships, because that's the only people I will be able to trust in my life, right?
Yeah.
If everything is automated, the moment you start the computer, all the text messages are gone. Everything is done for you.
Yeah.
How can you compete against that? And I think Rolex is a phenomenal example of that. It's true relationships.
Yeah.
Because the moment the watch is in the store, it's already gone to someone.
Yeah. So look, it's a great point. So in the context of my business and how I grew my business and how I choose to continue to grow the business and the rest of it, it's off the back of solid relationships. You know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Build a team. And relationships is definitely a strategy for us. We are focused heavily on building strategic relationships. So we want to be at the cutting edge of where people need our services, and that comes from a relationship. When it comes to AI and advice about investing and property investments and things like that, to me, I'm not very concerned about that. My clients, the network and things that at this point in time, I can't see how they can deliver the same services that we do.
Yeah, I think property and physical assets, gold, silver, are the ultimate antidote against AI because in the end of the day, I truly believe millions of people are going to lose their job, right? Just with the fast changes that we already see, we literally have for some clients, we've got an AI text bot. The moment the lead comes in through one of our lead magnets, it's literally being followed up by AI.
Yeah.
Right. So what does that mean for appointment setters?
Yeah.
Less work.
Well,
and it happens across so many spaces. And I think if you're not thinking about like, okay, like how can I protect myself or have some elements in investing or something like that, it's a serious thing, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Look. Yeah, that's more for your audience and more for the guys that are in that space. But yeah, it's definitely a fast moving. I think, in my personal opinion, sometimes the systems that try to get so smart and focus on being smart outsmart themselves. So it could be a case where people just are no longer responsive to appointment setting, to those types of ads and things like that. So as the market gets saturated, sure, we might have an early period of time where companies take this on board, but then when the human works out, hey, I'm actually being botted, right? Like by an AI bot and the rest of it, I think the conversion rates and the overall response to those things
is going to go lower.
Well, I could be wrong. I'm not a futurist, but yeah, if you want to put it in my way, I have a huge amount of faith in a human intelligence. Very hard thing to do these days, considering the people that are running the show and a lot of the people that we come up to. But I actually, when I think I have these conversations, I have a huge amount of faith in human intelligence, and that we will find our way through. And I'm hoping that some big changes in the way that we run things these days is close by.
Yeah, and what we love talking about on this channel as well is like client acquisition and different business strategies. A lot of business owners are going to watch this as well. You have a very unique way of how you've grown your business, a lot of true relationships. Could you share a little bit like about your strategic approach and how you've been able to scale very quickly?
Yeah, perfect. So the thing that I've found is that individual professionals these days, to be a leader and to be competitive, they need to be like a professional athlete. For example, you need to compete for your space and your market share, just like the same way an athlete needs to compete for their position in the team. And so that's your focus. You are trying to sharpen, refine, develop, and continue to make these small changes to outpace the others, which leaves very limited room for you to become an expert in something else.
Yeah.
But in that right angle there, that creates a huge opportunity for us to see the people that need good quality property of advice, and then we need to partner with those people and help them to get the best quality advice. And so that's with our financial planners, that's with our mortgage brokers, it's with our accountants and things like that. They're all really, really good at what they do, and then they come in and they get the individual piece from us, which is what we're really good at. So we spend all of our time being the best that we can be in the property market, and then we go and source relationships with the people that are the best in their space that will complement the transaction.
Plus, your partners are the closest to where the transaction is, right?
100%.
Between the bank and the end customer. So they're helping kind of like finding the best product with the bank, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Making sure the accountancy is all perfect.
Yeah.
They're the closest to your end client, and you partner up with them.
Yeah.
And create a symbiotic relationship to which it both benefits. It benefits all sides, the end user, the accountant firms, the mortgage broker people, and you. Yeah. And together you get the best possible product for the client.
So actually, how you just summed it up is perfect, because the piece that I missed is it's about the client.
Yes.
So everybody that's competing in business and the rest of it is competing for the client's attention and their dollar. And so if you can maximize the client experience through partnerships, that's where the magic happens. If you get a happy client and everybody's working together to give that experience, well, you're head and shoulders above the rest of your competition.
Yeah, and a lot of the things I actually learned, I learned from nature as well. It's like, you've got for instance, those birds, they hover into the mouth of the crocodile, right? And they help the crocodile remove the kind of the rotten flesh and stuff to help the crocodile, but the crocodile doesn't eat the bird at the same time.
Yeah.
And you can find those type of relationships in nature a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot of organisms and kind of different species and animals, they collaborate together to, survive basically. And the organisms that are like a parasite, they're only living for themselves.
Correct.
And then the only thing that happens is they only benefit, and that's it.
Correct.
And in business is the same thing. You've got all these collaborations happening between different businesses, different services to help each other grow, and that's really the only way that keeps a business is getting really good results for the clients and building really strong relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's funny how nature can work so well. Sometimes I think we can trust the crocodile and the bird a lot more than we can trust some humans. But that would be contradicting what I initially said, which I have a lot of faith in the human race. I
want to finally ask you kind of question about high performance, as you just touched upon. It was a beautiful analogy, being almost like a professional athlete in business. Now, Julian has, as I just mentioned before, he has worked with a lot of top players in the National Rugby League, strong physical men that are it's beautiful to watch. And you even have experience working with Michael Maguire, one of the top NRL coaches in Australia. I'm curious, how did you come into this niche? Because it's a very unique space. And also, what have you learned from Michael Maguire?
Yeah. So going back to the early days, we actually went to school together. So
wow.
Yeah. So he's older than me, but we caught the same school bus home for however many years, 10 years at school, wherever. And that's where we sort of struck up a friendship. And then obviously, school finished. I'm about five years younger than him. He went off and he was a player, and then he focused on coaching, and then it was a chance meeting when we met. And at that point in time, he'd just finished his coaching role at South Sydney, where he'd won a premiership, and the first premiership they'd won in about 24 odd years. Don't quote me exactly, but around that period of time. So it was a chance meeting, and then he was going to become the coach of the West Tigers, and the stars aligned for us to become involved together, and we became his sponsor at the West Tigers, and we did a deal with the West Tigers for 3 years. But it was COVID period of time, so we only saw out about 1.5 years of our period of time with Michael Maguire. So you're right. As a coach, he has got so many credentials under his belt at the moment. He's got overseas Super League premiership. He's got an NRL premiership. He now has a series with the New South Wales Blues. And a real upset too. I think it was 19 years ago or something along those lines. It was the last time that they won a series decider in Brisbane. So what's important? What do you learn from these people? It's actually fundamentally there's some very simple principles that you can follow to get the best out of people and to get the best out of yourself. And one thing that I think he does extremely well is that he can get the best out of people. And if you can master that skill, it's a huge
Like how does he like shout at you, or like does he like put pressure, or does he like I don't what does he exactly do?
So I don't have that much to do with him. Obviously, our relationship doesn't have anything to do. He's not trying to get the best out of me for the rest of it. But by all intensive purposes, what I understand a few key things to his success is perhaps how he can bring a team together. This is very, very important because each person in that team has a job. And so in business, there's so many, alignments between business and sport. And that's why they go so well hand in hand, is that how do you get the best performance out of a group of individuals? So that's individually getting to know them. And that's where the real skill is. And that skill has been shown to be, he's been very good at that, is how to get these individuals to come together, support each other, fight for each other to get an outcome.
Yeah, wow. Man, what a journey, what a conversation we've had thus far. I wanted to let you know as well that Julian offers free strategy sessions around property investing as well, right? Like there's a small chance that you're watching this, you're an NRL, AFL athlete, celebrity. If you're interested in working with Julian, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below where you can book a call with the man. I'll leave the LinkedIn details, Instagram, everything that you need in order to connect with Julian as well. And if you're just like, you got like a little bit like curiosity around property as well, don't be a stranger to Julian's calendar as well. If you're a high income professional, doctor, any kind of like pretty much if you're interested in
digital marketer, digital agency.
I honestly think that's a very powerful niche as well, because a lot of online coaches, a lot of advertising agency owners, we're really good at kind of like client acquisition and we're really good at marketing. But I've heard stories where people done it for 10 years and then all that digital cash is just evaporated and you've got nothing left.
Which is a common story previously with athletes as well. And that's changing now. And that's a very important point, that it's not how much you make, it's what you do with it. But definitely, from our point of view, one of the next markets that we're looking at is with the coaches, the digital, like the people in that coaching space. So that whatever they may be coaching, there's their people on board. We want to be able to support them with the property investment advice as well. And I'll also like to say that it's been a phenomenal journey working with you. You are hands down the best that we've ever worked with, and I appreciate all the results that you've got for us, of course.
Thank you so much, Julian. We really appreciated you coming all the way from Sydney as well to this podcast. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section down below. Subscribe, like. I will also leave a link to our exclusive full throttle advertising program for those that want to learn for free what it takes to advertise online. You can, literally make 100K a year from your bedroom doing this. As one of the reasons I started doing this Freedom Podcast, to really inspire people and bring different unique views around wealth, finances, spiritual, financial freedom. And you can find exclusive episodes in this particular course, including the whole program too. So thank you so much, Julian.
My pleasure.
Once again, man, I really appreciate you. We're going to have some Russian, Ukrainian food right now, and we're going to enjoy the beautiful beach view. And looking forward to see you in the next episode.
Thank you very much.